Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Now that we have finished the causes of war, we finished a third of what we need to know for topic 11. We need to move on to the next part, which is the war itself. Here we are. Now, this section isn't so much the way we've traditionally learned war. It isn't the way we've traditionally learned memorizing battles and leaders and names and how many soldiers were at a certain area, how many people died in a certain battle. It's more about concepts, more about conceptually, how was the war fought? How did that war lead to other aspects? How did that war lead to other components? And how did this war essentially create more technology, but was that technology useful? And this is to be explored not only for World War I, but also for World War II, the Chinese Civil War, you name it, any war in the 20th century. And World War I provides a very interesting field to ask these sort of deep conceptual questions. So, what does this mean? Well, this section is entitled Practices of War and the Impacts on the Outcome. So, essentially, we have two components here. Practices of war. In this context, it's referring to how was the war fought? How did they fight? What were they using? Why did it get used in that battle? So on and so forth. And then from there, it's taking that technology, it's taking that strategy, it's taking that concept or policy in some cases, and then asking the question, all right, did it guarantee victory? Did it guarantee loss? So does the use of superior technology mean you're always going to win? Does the use of massive amounts of individuals, does having huge soldiers, amounts of soldiers, equal victory in battle, right? If you outnumber your enemy. If it means, if you spend so much money, does that guarantee victory? Does that guarantee anything, really? And those are the questions we're going to ask. So for this unit in particular, we're going to invert the way we study war. So the video after this one is going to be exploring one of the bullet points, the first bullet point, types of war. Now, the first video is addressing this is not only because it's the first bullet point, but also you need to understand that war is not war. War is not just one person standing on one side, one person standing on another, and using death machines to eliminate their enemy. It's not these just glory stories of how this one man did what he needed to do, or this horrifying story of an entire city's population being blown up because of how big of a bomb was used. It's all about the different strategies, the different approaches, the different philosophies behind it. Because war, much like almost every other academic subject, has intricacies, has nuance. And so types of war is that. Types of war tells us, well, what is the war and what might that tell us? If it's a civil war, why is this country split? And why is this country split in more than two ways? In some cases, civil wars have been more than just two sides. Or the next part, wars between states, which is what World War I is. World War I is considered a cross-regional war. It was fought in multiple regions across the globe. And what this is essentially saying is 2 countries going to war, 3 countries going to war, 200 countries going to war, whatever it is, right? And the final type of war that IB is really requesting is guerrilla war, which comes from the Spanish Little War. And it's a different style of philosophy that we see in multiple other types of war, because these can kind of ebb and flow. Now, to understand the second bullet point, technological developments, air, naval, and land, we need to understand how exactly the war was fought. Thus, the following video after the types of war is a year-by-year playthrough of World War I, how the war was fought, analyzing it from the two main sides of the conflict: the Eastern Front, which happens in Eastern Europe, and the Western Front, which happens in the western side of Europe. And the video is going to explain year by year both sides. So it's going to be 1914, Eastern Front, Western Front. 1915, Western Front, Eastern Front. They're going to be right next to each other, back and back. Now, the main purpose of this is to really show how what's happening on one side is going to affect the other, and vice versa. For World War II, this is going to be even bigger, right? We're going to be looking at the Asian front, the Asian theater, versus the European theater, versus the African theater. And World War I has multiple theaters, just like World War II, but unfortunately, they're not explored enough histologically that is accessible without diving really, really deep into information that unfortunately doesn't fit our timetable. So once we go over that of a play-by-play of the war, then we address technological developments. Now again, this isn't you have to memorize the names of battles. It's how did the use of reconnaissance planes impact the way a battle was fought? How did the use of gas, chemical warfare, impact the outcome? How did the use of dreadnoughts play in the outcome of the war? So it's more diving into the technological component rather than just the memorization of a battle or the generals or anything like that. The third bullet point is going to be addressing the extent that mobilization of human resources. This is referring to the question I brought up earlier. Does having more soldiers equal a guaranteed victory? Or the extent of mobilization of economic resources. Does having or spending more money or having better supplies equal victory? Does that guarantee victory? So we're going to really dive into those. Now the third one, the influence and or the involvement of foreign powers, this one's really tricky, especially for a cross-regional war like World War I. Because in some cases, you have countries who were involved at the beginning and then their role changed, right? Like the United States. The United States stayed out of the war for the first 3 years, and then joined the war late in the later part. So this part we're not really going to address too deeply because it isn't as explored in a war that involves several countries, because they're all foreign countries no matter what war you're looking at, no matter what component you're looking at. It's not like civil wars or guerrilla wars, as you will learn. So on that note, let's dig right in.